Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Punchout Band podcast. I am your host, Lucian, and I'm here with my fearless co-host and photography lighting guru, Will Brock.
Hey, washed out and everything.
What is going on, man? How you doing?
Good, man. I'm breathing.
So this is our first episode in the Biden administration.
Come on.
Several executive orders have been signed in support of this podcast. That's not true. But some things are still the same. We're still here, still listening to great records. And today I thought we'd talk about one of my favorite singers, the one and only Patti Austin.
Yes.
So we listened to a few things from different points in her career. Some of the stuff like super early on, right after her debut record, she did a record on CTI Live at the Bottom Line, which is a club in New York. Mm-hmm. And it's one of my favorites, man. I remember when my wife and I were dating, I found that record in my dad's collection. He had the 12-inch. 12-inch LP, and I dubbed it onto a CD, like a live recording to CD, and I put that in the car, and like as I was like driving back and forth to see Steph, it would just be on the car on repeat. It's like one of those records for me, Live at the Bottom Line record.
Sure.
And the personnel is just like, it just hurts you.
Yeah, it's
right?
bananas.
So Patti Austin, obviously, Michael Brecker on tenor, Pat Rebelo on keys, Leon Penjarvis is the band leader, also on keys.
Piano, yeah. Leon
is the longtime musical director for the SNL band.
Amazing musician.
Show enough. Dave Espinoza on guitar, Will Lee of the CBS Orchestra, David Letterman band on bass, and Charles Collins on drums, who's on like all these like Ashford and Simpson records, among a million other things.
Sure.
Crusher Bennett on percussion, Babby Lloyd, Frank Lloyd, and Yolanda McCullough on background vocals, and then stuff is arranged by Dave Grusin of GRP fame,
right,
and Arthur Jenkins Jr. I mean, the record is just like, it's slamming.
It's full on correct,
yeah. But one of the things the reason that I brought this up in our last episode, where we were talking about Gladys, and if you haven't seen the last episode, I highly encourage you to check that out, because we talk about Gladys Knight and the Pips and how amazing they are.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to talking about how songstresses that last over decades, like their career spans these long decades, you see the evolution of their vocal tone, their styling, their timing, all that kind of stuff is very different from one place to the next. And as we were listening and prepping for last week's show, talking about like early Gladys and the Pips versus Gladys Knight, post Pips, and like how much smoother it is, I had that same sort of thought, like thinking about early Patti, Patti like 80s, and it's sort of like the height of her stuff, and then like newer, jazzier Patti.
Sure.
Although like
it's all jazzy.
As jazzy as it is, like there's some stuff like she can absolutely straight up swing.
Yes.
Like swing your face off, and she's still at that. But she also is one of those great singers that can like straddle the line so well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's this unmistakable grit in her voice in those early records.
Mm-hmm.
This Live at the Bottom Line record, especially, there's just something about it where she's just, there's just like this, it's a different sort of youthful vigor.
Yeah.
There's like, it's just hungrier. It's like moodier in a way, it's just like
younger.
It's less refined.
Yeah.
And in all the best ways.
Sure. I got to be honest, man. I've tried in my life not to like those records, particularly lately, just because they feel pretentious to me. But like on their face, they're beautiful. You can't not love them.
What so like what are examples of those records? Like what do you mean?
Um, like all of this, like the post Miles jazzy R&B records.
Mm-hmm.
They're really chordy. They're really, they're really slick. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's to me, and I'm saying this after listening to those records, like, oh, it's not that. Like they're just too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, and it's I mean, but like listening again on its face, that stuff is amazing. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. I mean, there are definitely some records that are way in that category that you talked about.
Sure.
You know, like music for the sake of musicians, and
Yes.
I feel like there's even more of that now.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
like
but see, I think I'm gonna push back on that a little bit because I think like it started in the like the mid '70s. Like that's when that began. That's when
Sure.
that was about. How many chords can I fit in this record? You know what I mean? How many notes are in this solo? And it wasn't that. It was like I'm a technical player, therefore I'm gonna put this stuff in there. And it's like, yeah. But again, intellectual exercise aside, those Patti Austin records are slamming. And Patti's voice is one of those voices that are in the tapestry of the stuff that we listened to growing up.
Sure. It's absolutely in there. I think she wouldn't necessarily get the same amount of recognition that somebody like a Gladys would get because she skews a bit jazzier. I feel like, it kind of gets buried. Like, she would be like on that smooth jazz circuit that we've spent so much time kind of working in those spaces. But yeah, I think that I get what you're saying about the pretentious thing, and I feel like there's an awful lot of music that has that.
Yeah.
But I think I also played something from the Patti Austin live record, which at the time of this recording I did not see on Spotify, but I'll do a harder search to see if I can find it to put that stuff in the playlist. If not, I'll find some stuff on YouTube and we'll link it down below. But one of the things that has always drawn me to the Patti live record, not At the Bottom Line, but just Patti Austin live, is you can tell there are monster players, but you can also tell that they are playing the gig.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And and not overstepping in any
space. Yeah.
One of the things that I thought about as a young musician listening to this, because I grew up listening to this record, right? My dad had this one too. I listened to this record as a young musician thinking like, oh, I could totally play this part. Like I could be in this band.
Right.
Like there's nothing that these players are doing.
Yeah, physically.
Right.
Right.
That is outside of my purview as a musician of, 15 or something.
Right.
But then as you go deeper, as you start to play along with it, right? Like I've definitely put this record on and strapped my bass on and then found myself holding on for dear life.
Right. Like, whoa.
It's like, oh, wait, that is not at all what we thought was happening in the bridge.
Exactly.
All of a sudden you sort of see the genius in like how it is at once understated, but absolutely an elevated piece of art.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all of that is just like happening in the background. It's like like a gorgeous, like piece of technology
Sure,
that just looks like a piece of glass.
but it's going
Underneath it, it's like,
right,
some crazy electronic marvel. It's that
right.
same sort of thing. So it's like
Absolutely.
the band is the electronic marvel,
Sure.
and out in front is just Patti floating over
Yeah.
as the glass.
Yes.
And that is where I will end this analogy because my brain hurts. But
No, it's real, man.
you see what I'm saying? Like
I do. I
there's just
do.
like the band is just like supporting her in such a way that you don't even think about it. It just becomes that tapestry upon
Yeah.
which she can present
Sure.
the
Sure.
story.
Sure.
And it's
And
incredible.
yeah, and listen, like again, listening to it now, like I can appreciate that aspect of it. Because it's like she first of all she sings her face off, but she sings perfectly for that ensemble, for those ensembles.
Yeah.
Like she does that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
I mean she like it's not too much. It's not too I mean because essentially what she's singing is pentatonics the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That she's doing the R&B singer thing.
She is.
And the band is like, all right, do that. We got you. It just happens to be slicker. Happens to be more chords.
Just like
a little bit hipper.
It's just like the slightly rounded corners.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what
exactly.
I mean?
It's like
it's nice joinery.
no, it really is. It really is. The woodworking analogies are really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I mean, it's because it's like that music has made me repel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It really has. Because I'm a music school guy. You know what I mean? So that music is what was held up as the way to get down. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And even those records were looked down on even a little bit. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know.
Yeah, and but still held up as the thing. But all that aside, you know what I mean? Like not thinking about all that heady stuff, cultural. It's good music, man. It's I don't have a lot to say because I've dismissed it for a lot of my latter career.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because I've tried to get back into the guttural music of the thing. But it's like listen, have you listened a lot of Tower Power?
Mm-hmm.
I used to love that music. Love it.
Why did you love it?
Because it was honestly, it was complicated. It was rhythmically like you know what I mean? That's but now I listen to it and it's like it's a magic trick. You know what I mean?
I do.
And the Patti Austin music of that era that we just listened to felt like that to me because I clumped it all together. Like, oh, that's just that.
Uh-huh.
And it just ain't.
It's a little different.
It's way different.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful and Patti's voice is really a part of our it's a part of our lives. Coming up in the 70s, those records were on the radio.
Yeah. And,
you know what I mean?
Into the 80s, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's eye-opening to go, all right, now it's time to re-examine. Like this happened 10 minutes ago. Yeah. Now it's time to re-examine all of the music and really find the value and the beauty in it and of it and about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you know, I did this because of some other stuff.
I feel you. So two things. I wanted to say to you, I think that you're categorizing TOP as a magic trick is such an interesting classification, but it totally fits.
Sure.
You know? And like and the thing about it that's interesting to me is like I like a magic trick every once in a while.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like you're walking down the strip in Vegas and you're like, "Hey babe, let's go see David."
Let's go see it. Yeah.
You know? Because sure. I mean, like it is absolutely magical what those dudes can do and have done. Like I have this one Tower Power record called it escapes me now.
What's the cover look like?
I don't remember the cover. I just remember it's one of the live records. It's got like 5 tunes on it.
Okay. Early live record?
Hang on. Let me pull it up. But it's just like one tune on this record is 18 minutes or something.
Right.
Let's see if I have it. Live and in Living Color.
Yes.
Is the record.
Yes.
And
I know it well.
The end of that record, they do a version of Knock Yourself Out. And
sure.
I stand corrected. It's 23 minutes and 8 seconds.
Sheesh.
And it is just the most face melting of organ solos.
Sure.
You know, Doc gets on there and just like plays the pads off of the baritone saxophone.
Sure.
You know, but I mean, like the magic trick of it is like all of the work that they did to make those arrangements work, and like the way that Garibaldi's snare thing plays with the horn lines,
right?
And it's like they've literally accounted for every 16th note on the entirety of the thing.
Absolutely.
And it's like somebody sat there with a grid and said, okay, baritone will play this one, tenor will play that one, bass will play this one, drums will play that. You know what I mean? And it's like, and when you put it all together, it is just like, oh crap, these dudes are crazy good.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, and crucify me in the comments for this if you want, like it can be fatiguing.
Absolutely.
To just like, you know, like I love that record, but then it's like after that, I'm like, cool, let me put on some ballads.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, because it's like
it's exhausting.
It's an active listen. Like you really have to be like picking up all the stuff.
Exactly, and it's not funky. That's what's important to remember. Like they were, I don't believe they're alive, and I'm saying this, but they were billed as a funk band.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't funky. And I'm completely willing to say this is my cultural thing speaking. But like I listen to it now and it's like, where's the guttural like thing? Because like literally I spent half of my high school career and most of my adulthood revering them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then one day I put on a record, was like, huh? Because, you know, it's math. It's math.
It is math.
And
you're right.
Math is not funky.
And I think all of this conversation goes back to your first comment about the magic trick, right? Like,
yeah.
It's sort of like the sleight of hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there isn't necessarily the guttural substance behind said smoke and mirrors.
Exactly.
As beautiful as it is.
And it is beautiful. Absolutely. And also, I remember the Tower Power horns on Huey Lewis records, and And that was a big thing for me. But later in my life, I was like, I listened to Earth, Wind, and Fire records, and it was like, oh, that's funky. That's funky. Because it's not math.
What do you think is the difference? How do they do it differently?
You gonna put me on the spot right now?
I mean, I'm just playing this out now. Like that is, I mean, it's an interesting thing, and I feel like at a gut level, I get that. I get what you're saying.
Sure.
But I'm like, it's like a rhythm section and a bunch of horns over here and some vocals. And it's a rhythm section, some horns over here with some vocals. Maybe some longer, straighter hair in the bass player, but it's like how like what is the calculus that makes them so different? Is it just like what part of the country they come from? Is it the cultural makeup of the band? Is it the nature of the music? Because they had like Earth, Wind, and Fire has some crazy, intricate, ridiculous horn parts.
But it was always funky.
Right, but what makes it funky?
Okay. So I remember watching, I do this all the time because I'm a nerd. The Tower of Power perform on Soul Train.
Okay.
Later in my journey as a listener. And it just bothered me. So let me stop.
Okay, stop.
This is about my perception. This is about my perception. So it's about my understanding of culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's about my understanding of oppression. It's about my understanding of what yields our music. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So when someone attempts to make that music, I feel like, and again, completely me, I feel like a prerequisite for making that music is bone crushing oppression. You know what I mean? You've lived your life with the thumb on your neck, with the foot on your neck. And so it yields a richness of understanding, because soul music comes out of oppression. It just does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just does. So when it doesn't, it feels fake to me. Now I know in no uncertain terms that forgetting that whole that feels good to a lot of people. Okay, so where was I?
Bone crushing oppression.
Right. So when it doesn't come out of that, it feels disingenuous. It feels fake. Like disingenuous is too generous a term. It feels like a minstrel show. Like it really does. And so understanding the minstrel show tradition, it's really difficult for me to like that's what I hear when I hear them sing that music. You know what I mean? Sure. Because they don't talk like that. They don't think like that. Like they'll sing, you know, and then speak as if that character that they're playing doesn't exist. And that's just really bizarre to me. So going back to the Tower of Power, Earth, Wind, and Fire thing, it's like they put that thing on and they did that magic trick, and then they talk. They come back, and it sounds like that's not who you are. Like, you don't know what the pain that yielded that music. So, yes, I do believe that it sounds different. But for me, before it even gets there, it's like, why are we pretending? You know?
Sure.
You know, it's a difficult conversation to have, but I think it's the reason I respond to that music that way. Like, because that Patti Austin, those Patti Austin records feel like that. You know what I mean? Because even if you're not singing, if you're just playing, all of it comes out of bone crushing oppression. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so when all of a sudden you're 1, 2, like, you've seen this in a class where the band director, in a college class where the band director is this lily white dude from wherever. And when he goes to count 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, it's like, where did that voice come from? Where did that now you started putting on a character. Now you're in the minstrel show world. You know what I mean?
I do.
And it's like, you know, and I didn't think anything of it until the last 15 years of my life. But like, I remember all of the dudes that came. It was like, oh, you're literally making fun of me. You're making fun of me and my children and Pops and Miles and Quint. You're making fun of them, and you don't even know it.
Let me ask you this question. Since we're now on the dark web side of the show.
You really are. I'm sorry.
It's fine. We only had like 3 subscribers to begin with. What I don't know that there's an answer to this, but
okay.
Is there a line in your mind? And again, this is a YouTube show. Whatever you say, people are not going to listen to anyway. My question is there a line in your mind between honoring the tradition and assuming a character, as you put it? Right? Like,
sure. I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? Because like all the time that we spend learning these records and learning the music and becoming, like, perfecting our craft, we are preached at about the importance of vocabulary, the importance of what the idiom requires, and and sort of how you approach it, right?
Right.
And so, you know, in your band director example, which, to be perfectly fair with you, it's a whole lot of band directors that cannot count that way.
Right.
And that is more painful to me than.
That's my point.
But what I'm saying to you is, you know, those band directors that are, or whomever, those musicians or singers that are studied in whatever the genre is, right? I mean, that is the proper way to count off a tune that is going to swing, right?
Is it?
Right? That 1, 2, 1, 2, right? That thing.
Absolutely. It
that
is.
is the way that you do it.
Unless you are putting on, and I'm going to harp on this. 1, 2, 2. It's like you are imitating. You are Al Jolson in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way you did it.
Yeah.
If I heard half of my band directors from high school to college cut off like that,
Yeah.
like you did, okay. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. That's fine.
Mhm.
But 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 they take it a step further, and it seems like a small thing.
I'm see. Okay, it's okay. It makes sense to me now. What
You
you're
know what
saying.
I'm saying?
I do.
It's like the understanding that in this moment when you're counting this off to the end of the tune, I'm going to pretend I'm an old black man who has had 50 years of oppression on my ass. And then when the song is over, thank you very much. This is the best. And then it's like it's disgusting. You know what I mean?
I do. I understand.
It's and the line that you talk about, like the people that there are big bands in every city, but Philadelphia is one. So I'll just say this. They take the entire big band, the whole jazz tradition, and hire all white cats. It's like, but so you've gotten so good at this art form that comes out of oppression that you don't need us anymore. It's like, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it seems, and again, it seems small, but it's the way they make sure that we disappear from the music. And we do. And then they pretend that there aren't any young musicians, any young black musicians that are in this music. And it's just not true. And then they create these universities where we learn all these rules, and those rules become the music. And it's not.
True.
It's not.
True.
But there's a whole generation of dudes that believe that it is. And even the guys that are really good hire all white guys. Even the guys that are really good have gotten so far away from the actual tradition of apprenticeship and lifestyle and understanding of oppression that it doesn't matter anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So so to go back to what we were originally talking about, that's the pushback I have with that music. Like soon as I hear, because playing all those chords, it was like, what are you doing? That's what Basie would have said. That's what Ellington, like, what, huh? Like, this is not what this is. You know what I mean? Let's make it, let's play a blues and 4 chords, maybe.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And we're gonna make it swing that way. But as soon as they get their hands on it, it's like, okay, let's make it a math problem. And they convince us, the intelligent, educated musician, black musician, to go, yeah, that's music. That's the music. And it's not. It's just not. That's why I'd much rather listen to Sly. You know what I mean? That's why I'd much rather listen. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because that's the music. Because the reality is the evolution of the music is Sly, is the Isley Brothers, is because jazz truthfully, is not even the proper term for the music. It's not. It's not. It was a way that people, when you're jazzing around. You know what I mean? That's what that was. You know, when you hear Miles in interviews, he's like, "What are we? I don't want to call this jazz because it ain't jazz. It's just music. It's self-expression. It's just blah 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 blah." But you know what? When we codified it into this college, this university function, it's jazz all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden, historically, it becomes jazz. And Pops didn't call it jazz. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Those dudes, they weren't caught up in that thing. Because naming something and owning it is not of us. You know what I mean?
Sure.
This is just music. This is just artistic expression. So, I mean, I've gone far afield, but you know, that's the pushback I have on those records.
That's fair. So, going back to your experience with Patti today, right? So we listened to a couple of things from the live record. We listened to Patti Austin live through the test of time. We listened to "It's the Falling in Love,"
yes,
which is off the wall record, which I know which is one of your how do you say, desert island recordings.
Absolutely.
And as you sort of rediscover this, I mean, sum it up for me, like how, given all those things that you just said, that cost us our entirety of sponsorship, what have you rediscovered in listening to that music tonight?
That sometimes music is just music. Sometimes it's just music, you know, like, because regardless of everything that I said, it all happened, you know? So in high school, I loved the Tower of Power because it all happened. And it's where I was, and I enjoyed it, and it was great. It was just music. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that it doesn't change anything, but it also doesn't change anything. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't. I don't feel like I wasted time loving the Tower of Power.
Sure.
I still love them to a certain degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I wasted time loving all those records that came from the late 70s, early 70s, 80s. I learned a great deal. It's a beautiful time and it's just music. You know what I mean? So getting back to the tradition of not naming and getting back to the tradition of not needing to know what it is, it's beautiful to just be able to go, this is good music. Because culturally, you know, culturally it is what it is, but it's, you know, I love the music, you know, and those records are really good records. And it's just music. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
And it's difficult for me because of my cultural understanding and the things I've latched onto culturally to say that and to feel that. So maybe I've robbed myself of that a little bit because of my cultural leanings. But, you know, there is some beautiful music out there that I've absolutely dismissed. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that anything else needs to be said. And if you've made it to this part of the video, then you probably just me or Will watching to make sure that we record it to the end. Guys, thank you all so much for listening. As always, please resubscribe because you unsubscribed in the middle of the video. Like it, tell your friends about it. Guys, this is the Punch Out Bin podcast where we talk about great records that have affected us and are affecting us right now.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to seeing you on the next one where we'll talk about something else, hopefully not so polarizing. We'll see you next time on the Punch Out Bin.
Easy, y'all.